Terrarian in the Dungeon, Chapter 40, Fan Fiction by Azazyel. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel for listening and patreon.com/Azazyel to read all of his stories. Apollo's head snapped back at my abrupt headbutt, and I made sure to actually hit his own forehead and not shatter his nose or anything. Despite how Apollo was scum, I didn't want the death of a god hanging on my shoulders. Don't fucking touch me, you pathetic worm. Your arrogance has destroyed years of growth for your familia with so many deaths because your captain wanted to sit on his ass and not even fight properly. Hell, you fuckwits didn't even ask me. The damned creator and summoner of the monster Rex's capabilities. I snarled in disbelief at the idiocy of the god. Apollo unsteadily got back to his feet while he held onto his head, and he pointed at me in apparently just as much disbelief as I was in at him. You dare strike me? I will ruin you. I, Phoebus Apollo, declare a war game upon the Seshet Familia for your insult. He screeched, and I idly debated the cost of being cursed by the god if I put a sword through his throat. But in the end, as the other familias who came to watch the battle approached, obviously paying great attention to this event, I spoke dryly. And what familia will you challenge me with? A couple of level 2s? Why does that seem like such a joke, Apollo? I then turned to all the adventures that surrounded us as Apollo slumped in place, as he was well aware that Daphne couldn't beat me, nor was Cassandra a threat at all with how timid she was. Adventurers of Rio, hear me. These monster Rexes are not a joke. They are not a status symbol or something you can shrug off. These are monsters that are worthy for you to level up with. Thus, such a challenge is more than capable of reaping your lives if you treat this a joke. I spoke loudly, with many of the more savvy, experienced adventurers nodding their heads in agreement, but such people were already level 2 or 3, not the newbie level ones who treated monster killing as a bit of a side gig or something. I then stared down Apollo, who had stood back up. This is a dangerous event, far more lethal than any war game. Should you continue your claim, I will finish your familia in any case. I said before, dismissively looking away from him, to the next familia on the list of people who wanted to test their might. Takamikazuchi familia, are you ready? I asked, looking to their captain, Uka, who nodded, hefting his large great axe behind himself. Yes, we will be fighting the king slime monster, and we have made plans to deal with it safely in a controlled manner. But do you have any advice, Jake? Uka proudly spoke, and I smiled, as Takamikazuchi was a friend of Hestia, so I didn't mind helping them out with some advice. Beware, once you deal a good bit of harm to him, he will become enraged, jumping around much faster than usual, and will shake off its acidic gel to land on you, and such a fate of being covered in metal melting acid will not be pretty, I said with utmost seriousness. Uka nodded, and everyone dispersed, with the Takamikazuchi familia staying to fight the next boss, but the crowd was kind enough to help with dragging the Apollo familia corpses off the field so no one would trip over them or something. This isn't over, Jake Barris. There will be a reckoning for your failure to help or warn us. Apollo snarled, and I looked over him one final time before I came to a conclusion. Alright, Apollo. Fuck you and your familia. In the name of my goddess Eshet, accept your war game. I will see you at the guild to formalize the details later today at sundown. I said strongly as I eyed Apollo. I was literally done with this degenerate red-headed stepchild. Damn it, Apollo. Daphne hissed as she stomped over at hearing my declaration, and in the middle of all of Rio watching remotely, the crimson-haired beauty grabbed Apollo and dragged the god away by his ear. After getting King Slime summoned, watching the Takamikazuchi familia take care of it was a completely different experience from how the Apollo familia dealt with the Desert Scourge. Because the Takamikazuchi familia was a familia that lived and breathed in the dungeon, whereas the Apollo familia, having dozens more members, they were trash who only got the bare minimum letter requirement before leveling up by killing a minotaur or an infant dragon in a party. First, they corralled the King Slime with Uka carefully herding it away from Mikoto, who at the moment of the monster Rex coming into being, began chanting while her teammates used longbows to strike the boss with my own arrows, so they didn't just melt in the potent acid within the slime's body. I respectfully speak to you, my war god that can break through anything, lead me from the precious heaven. Give my petty body, the divine power of your grand body. Rescue them, light of purification, sword of crushing evil. Sweep sword of suppression, sacred sword of conquest. It arrives here now by my order. Descend from heaven, rule the earth, Shimbu Tusiai. She chanted, yelling at the end as a pure black magical pillar captured the king slime and squashed it flat under its crushing gravity magic that filled the pillar. Use the explosive bolts. Uka yelled as he pulled his own longbow off his back. The half-dozen supporters and other adventurers switched to alchemical bolts. Then the king's slime, once the height of a semi-truck, was compressed to the point of only being as thick as a cinder block, and with each explosive arrow that collided with it its flesh was blasted apart until the king's slime died under Makoto's powerful gravity spell. While I stood in a tree line with Belle beside me, watching the fight, Finn came over to me. "Well, Jake, got any ideas after seeing a weaker familia properly deal with a monster Rex?" he asked, and I shrugged. "Yeah, hook up to the roof of the dungeon in Riveria where it cannot jump that high, and then just drop bombs on it, until it dies," I answered cheerfully, and the Paolum snorted at my cowardly answer, but in the end, he shrugged. "I suppose that's one way to level up. The fauna cares more for the success of a challenge than how difficult you make the challenge in any case. That's how Perseus, or Hermes' Asphi Andromeda reached level 4 by bombing monster Rexes to death after much preparation." Finn spoke candidly. "So, Finn. Why are you here? Did you come to speak with me about Apollo's little challenge that I answered?" Finn sighed, nodding. "Look, Jake, the Loki familia can't be seen interfering as that would be considered the highest degree of bullying with them only having some level 2s and dash." Before he continued, I cut him off. "Finn, I do not fear Apollo's little collection. Whatever challenge the Donatus gives between our familias, I will win outrightly, or their familia will not survive challenging me as I drop another monster Rex on them," I said bluntly, and Finn facepalmed, shaking his head. "Well, tamed monsters haven't been outlawed for use in war games, so monster Rexes. Yeah, I imagine they will allow you to abuse such a thing for the first fool to challenge you so they can have cause to outlaw it due to you not having control over them," Finn said, shrugging, as that was the politics of Ororio. In the midst of the cheers of the Takamikazuchi as they happily took their goodie bags from killing the bosses, Belle finally spoke as she had gone silent after the deaths of the Apollo members. "Jake, please don't just kill all the Apollo members. I mean, Apollo is obviously a terrible person and should be sent back to Tenkai or something." Finn just snorted, shaking his head. "Well, I said my piece. The guild has your cut of today's earnings also. I wanted to warn you about something, personally, Jake." Finn's face was both a cut of grim and wry as he continued to speak. "Hythe Velvet, the Golden Witch, or Vanna Mardell, of Freya's familia, who was helping the Jien Chet familia with healing, has been asking a lot of questions about you and your familia. Where you fight in a dungeon, your interests, and how people can get into your tower to access your shop. Just a lot of questions to a number of people. This isn't Freya herself doing something, no, this is Heath up to something. He warned me, and then he nodded to me and Belle as he walked away. It's just never one thing alone now, is it?" I thought, sighing as I gave Belle a side hug, making her squeak in surprise, but I paid her surprised noises no care as I refueled on Belle's cute energy. "Alright, there are 4 more familias needing a boss. So why don't you go back to Ororio and get my goddess to the guild so she can get this war game going?" Before she could say anything, I put a finger to her lips, silencing her. "Belle, there's nothing for you to do here, and I can tell you need to clear your head. This was the first time you saw people die, right?" I asked, and Belle bit her lips before nodding softly, so I just pulled her head against my chest as I patted her head. "Belle, being an adventurer is a path that walks with death. I cannot comfort you and say this is never going to happen again, nor are you not going to directly take someone's life, as it's perfectly possible you may have to. Especially if they challenge your familia to a war game." I spoke softly as I brushed my hands over Belle's head to comfort her before taking a step back from her as she pouted. "Now go on. Hestia and Seshet need you to escort them to the guild to pick up all the money we made," I said, trying to cheer her up with the millions of Valis we made today. "Alright, Jake, I will." Belle nodded, and then, just like the rabbit everyone called her with her looks, she ran off, almost literally bouncing as she dashed back to Ororio faster than the trot of the horses that brought us here.